Ever feel like you need a decoder ring or something when you're trying to figure out if someone likes you?
Right.
It's like you're trying to read all these little signals, but you're not sure what they mean.
Yeah, it's definitely a universal experience.
Totally. So today we're going to do a deep dive into that whole thing. Like, what's the psychology behind attraction?
That's a great topic.
What are the signs you should be looking for? And how can you tell if someone's really into you?
I love it.
All right, so our source material today is this really interesting podcast episode about, I think it was called 5 Signs a Boy Might Like You, something like that.
Okay.
And now before you think, oh, this doesn't apply to me, it does. Because even though it's geared toward a younger audience, the thing is, these basic principles of attraction,
Yeah.
they're pretty universal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the underlying psychology is remarkably similar.
Yeah. So let's jump right into it. The first sign this podcast talks about is attention, like how much attention he pays to you. And they use this example of this girl, Sarah, and her crush remembered her go-to coffee order, like very specific,
Wow.
which, you know, seemed like a small thing, but it actually made her feel really seen.
Interesting.
Have you ever noticed anything like that? Where someone remembered like a tiny detail about you,
Okay,
and it made you feel like,
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like a little mental Post-it note that got stuck to you.
it's like they're saying, you're important enough for me to remember this.
Precisely. Because think about it, our attention, it's a limited resource.
Mm-hmm.
We can't focus on everything at once,
Mm.
right? So when someone remembers those details about us, especially those small everyday things, it shows they're making a conscious effort. They're actively trying to encode information about you.
It's like they're filing it away because they know they're going to need it later.
Exactly. It means you're standing out to them on a mental level.
You're cognitively salient. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
Okay, good. I'm trying to learn the lingo.
I'm impressed.
Okay, so moving on. Sign number 2 is humor.
Always a good one.
Because who doesn't love someone who makes them laugh?
Right. It's so true.
And the podcast gave this really cute example of this guy, Mark, who would make all these silly faces just to get his crush's attention.
Oh,
It's kind of adorable.
it is. And,
Yeah.
there's actually a lot of science behind why we find humor attractive. When we laugh, our brains release endorphins, those feel-good chemicals. So we naturally start associating those positive feelings with the person who made us laugh.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
Precisely.
The more they make you laugh, the more you like being around them.
Exactly. But it goes even deeper than that. Humor is also a way of testing for compatibility.
Mm-hmm.
When someone tries to make you laugh, they're gauging your sense of humor, seeing if you connect on that level. And that can be so important for any relationship, really.
It's like you're both speaking the same comedic language.
Yes, it's like finding that shared inside joke
Yeah,
that strengthens a bond.
exactly. Okay, so we've got attention to detail. We've got humor. What's next?
All right, this one is a classic for a reason. Proximity,
He's always around.
you got it.
Like you bump into him everywhere you go, and you're starting to wonder if it's just a coincidence.
Right. Or is there something more to it? The podcast had this almost comical anecdote about this guy who strategically planned his study sessions around this girl he liked, even though they had completely different classes.
Wow, he was dedicated.
He was. He just wanted to be near her.
So is that really a thing? Like the more you're around someone, the more likely you are to develop feelings.
There's definitely something to that. There's actually a psychological principle called the mere exposure effect.
Catchy name.
Right. But essentially, it means that the more we're exposed to something or someone, the more familiar and likable they become. Think about it. The more you hear a song, the more you tend to like it,
That's so true.
right? It's the same with people.
Yeah.
But it's not just about being physically close. It's about the opportunity that proximity creates. Being around someone more often leads to more interactions, shared experiences, conversations, all those things that help you build a connection.
So it's not just about being in the same zip code. It's about actually engaging with each other.
It's exactly.
Got it. Okay, so we've covered attention, humor, proximity.
You ready for number 4?
Hit me with it.
This one might seem a little counterintuitive. Nervousness.
Nervousness, like he gets all flustered and tongue-tied around you.
Precisely. The podcast told a story about this guy who'd turned into a total klutz around his crush, dropping things left and right.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
It can be. And it actually makes perfect sense from a biological perspective.
Oh, really? How so?
Okay, so when we're attracted to someone, our bodies go into this mild stress response.
Stress, like a bad kind of stress.
Not necessarily bad. Just think of it as a mini version of the fight or flight response. Our heart rate increases. We might start to sweat. And yes, some of us even become a bit clumsy.
So those butterflies in your stomach,
Exactly.
that's actually a real physiological response.
It's our primal instincts kicking in, even if our conscious mind is trying to play it cool.
That's kind of sweet, actually.
It is. It shows you're affected by this person, that they have this effect on you.
I like that. Okay, so we've got attention, humor, proximity, nervous energy. What's the final sign we should be looking for?
This one is all about positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
And it's something I think most of us appreciate. Compliments.
Oh, yeah. Everyone loves a good compliment.
Right. And when someone regularly compliments you,
Mm-mm.
it can be a really strong indicator of attraction.
So, like, if he notices your new haircut
Yeah, well,
or tells you you have a great laugh?
exactly. The podcast used this example of a guy who was constantly praising his crush's artwork. He would tell her how talented she was, how much he loved her creativity.
So it's not just about fishing for compliments. It's about genuinely appreciating something about the other person.
Yes. And when we compliment someone, we're trying to create a positive association. We're essentially saying, I appreciate this about you. And on a subconscious level, we're kind of hoping to get a similar response in return.
It's like saying, hey, I see you, I appreciate you, and maybe, just maybe, they feel the same.
Precisely.
So are these 5 signs like a foolproof formula?
Not quite.
What do you mean?
Well, we got to remember, these are just individual data points, like clues within a much larger picture.
Okay. So how do we make sense of it all? How do we know if these signs mean something real, or if we're just reading into things?
That is the million-dollar question. And that's what we'll explore when we come back.
And we are back, trying to crack the code of attraction and
It's
figure out, like, is this person into me or am I imagining things?
the age-old question.
Right.
Right. So we talked about these 5 signs, but how do we know if they actually mean something? Like, how do you tell the difference between genuine interest and just like someone who's naturally observant or, a naturally funny person?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the key is context. You got to look at the whole picture, not just these individual signs in isolation.
Okay. So give me an example.
Wait, so let's say he remembers your coffee order.
Right.
That could mean something. Or it could just mean he was behind you in line at the coffee shop that one time.
So it's not just about what he does. It's about the circumstances around it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, does he go out of his way to talk to you?
Yeah.
Or do you just happen to bump into each other at the coffee shop every now and then? Big difference.
Big difference. Okay, what about compliments? Because I feel like everyone likes getting compliments, so how do you know if it's more than just like, oh, he's being nice?
Yeah, good point. I think with compliments, it's about frequency and specificity.
What do you mean?
Like a single compliment. Hey, I like your shoes. It could just be politeness. But if he's constantly complimenting you, like you always have the best ideas, or I love how you make everyone feel so comfortable, that's different.
It's like he's noticing the things that make you you.
Exactly. And he's going out of his way to acknowledge them.
Hmm.
And another thing is, pay attention to how those compliments make you feel.
Yeah.
Do they feel genuine,
Hmm.
specific to you? Or are they just kind of generic? Like he could say them to anyone.
Okay, so we're looking for quality over quantity and how it makes us feel.
Exactly. Trust your gut on that one.
Right.
Your intuition is a powerful tool.
Speaking of intuition, what about that whole nervousness thing? Because couldn't that just be, he's not good with people in general?
It could, but I think you can usually tell the difference. It's about looking at the whole package. Like,
Okay.
Does his body language change when you're around? Does he make eye contact? Maybe even blush a little? Or is he just kind of generally awkward?
So it's about those subtle cues, the nonverbal stuff.
Exactly. Our bodies have a way of revealing what our words might not.
It's like a whole secret language.
Right. Like if he leans in when you're talking or mirrors your body language.
Mirroring, like looking in a mirror.
Not quite, but similar. Like if you cross your legs and then he crosses his legs a few seconds later.
Oh, subconscious mimicking. I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's a subtle way we build rapport without even realizing it.
Mm.
And it often happens when we're attracted to someone.
Wow. It's like our bodies are trying to tell us something.
They are. And another thing to pay attention to is how he responds to your energy. Like, let's say you're telling a story and you're really excited about it. Does he match your enthusiasm? Does he seem genuinely interested? Or does he seem checked out? Or even worse, try to one-up you.
Oh, yeah. That's the worst.
Right. You want someone who's going to meet your energy, someone who gets excited about the things you're excited about.
Okay. So it's all about reciprocity.
Exactly. A true connection is a two-way street.
I like that. So we've been talking a lot about romantic attraction, but do you think these principles apply to other kinds of relationships too?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And it really speaks to the heart of what we're talking about here, which is human connection.
Yeah.
It's like all these things we've been talking about, they're not just about romantic attraction, they're about human connection, period.
So, like, how does that work in other relationships?
Well, think about when you meet someone new and you're like, I think I could be friends with this person,
Yeah, like you just get a good feeling.
right? You're probably picking up on those same signs. Shared laughter, genuine interest, maybe even a little mirroring.
So it's not that different from being attracted to someone, at least in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about finding those people who,
It get you.
who appreciate your energy and reflect it back.
Your people.
Exactly. The ones who make you feel seen, understood, appreciated. And those are the connections worth cherishing, whether they're romantic or platonic or even just, someone you enjoy grabbing coffee with every now and then.
This has been such a fascinating conversation. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on this whole attraction thing.
That's what I love to hear because it's not about, you know, playing games or trying to manipulate anyone. It's about understanding the deeper dynamics at play and using that knowledge to build more meaningful connections in all areas of our lives.
So if someone's listening to this and they're trying to figure out if someone likes them, what's the most important thing to remember?
Trust your gut. Pay attention to those subtle cues, but at the end of the day, your intuition is your most powerful tool. If it feels right, it probably is.
Right.
And if it doesn't, well, it's probably time to move on.
I love that. Trust your gut. Simple, but so profound. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into the psychology of attraction. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep exploring those connections.